who has been a voice particularly strong, not just in protection of Vermonters, but moving us towards a universal single-payer healthcare system. That's one thing that we're all very happy about. It's one of the things that Cass is committed to. It would be great to have a lieutenant governor willing to work with the governor to move that agenda forward. So I'm really pleased that Governor Peter Shumlin is here today, and I want to welcome him.
Thanks, Jared. Anthony didn't kiss me, but I came close, so I thought I was doing well. Hey, I just want to tell you what an honor it is to be here today to introduce the next Lieutenant Governor of the state of Vermont. And as I look around this room, I understand the strength of this candidacy. And I just want to say the first I heard about Cash running for Lieutenant Governor was in a field where we were clipping the ribbon on yet another solar project in East Montpelier, Vermont. And Anthony Klena came up to me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Wow, would she do it? That's exciting." And the reason I was so excited was because of what I look at looking out in this room. We have the first, it's been acknowledged that this is a tough race, but a winnable race. I look at Governor Phil Hoff here today, the first Democratic governor in the history of the state of Vermont who took a risk and won. I think here in the biggest city in the state of my other great friend, Bernie Sanders, who ran for mayor, took a risk, and won. And look what it's done for Vermont. I think about all of the folks in public office today who have had to take a risk to make a difference. And I think that's what this race is all about. Look, here we are united, progressives, Democrats, thoughtful independents like Representative Paul Poirier and others, coming together to say, we stand here today to introduce what we believe will be a great lieutenant governor for the following reasons. Cass understands that we need to be the first state in the country that has a sensible, single-payer healthcare system where healthcare is a right, not a privilege, where we get it right and have the other states follow us. She is a leader in healthcare. Second, as has been mentioned, what we have in common as statewide office holders, and it's not just me, I see Secretary of State Condos is here. I know that we have Attorney General Sorrell and Senator Patrick Leahy, Senator Bernie Sanders, Congressman Peter Welch, your governor, others. This is what we have in common. We are aging, wrinkled, white men. It's the truth. The exciting thing about this candidacy is we finally have a dynamic, bright, committed woman under 35 who wants to be a leader for the future of the state of Vermont. That's important. I can tell you as a Democrat running for governor, I find it shocking that unless we win the governorship of the state of New Hampshire, there will be no Democratic women governors in America. None. Zero. Melinda just told you about the number of women lieutenant governors we have. So it's an honor for me to introduce to you today Cassandra Gekas, who we must all work hard for. She cares about a sensible healthcare system. She cares about our agricultural future. She cares deeply about those who don't have a voice, those who don't have an income. She's going to fight for women's rights and human rights. It's an honor to introduce to you today Cassandra Gekas.
Being here. This is incredibly moving. I'm so grateful to those that I've shared the stage with today, Senator Polina, Melinda Moulton, Senator Hinda Miller, and of course our great governor who deserves another round of applause. And I could stand here and list every single person person in this room, but I will spare you because my speech is long enough. But I also do want to give a special recognition to Governor Hoff and his wife Joan for being here and who have really made. So my decision to run for Lieutenant Governor came as a surprise to many, I know this, but it didn't, for those who know me, I don't think it was all that surprising. It's simply the next step in my journey, and I think that I have a lot to build on. For 10 years now, I've worked as a tireless advocate behind the scenes, fighting for the most critical issues that we face in Vermont. So this includes domestic violence, access to transportation, women's health, women's right to choose, and most recently, healthcare. But all of these issues really boil down to two important points. One is to build stronger communities, and the other is to be a voice for those whose hopes, fears, and dreams are so often left unheard. I have not, nor will I ever, accept the status quo, and I've never been content to sit on the sidelines in the face of injustice. I don't merely overcome challenges, I seek them out. I choose to be a voice for the voiceless because I know that this is what matters, it's the right thing to do, and honestly, if I'm not the underdog, I think I'm doing something wrong. My decision to shift really from the role of behind-the-scenes advocate to the very life of a public official was not easy or quick. It was really a slow build over time, and a voice that grew stronger and stronger in me as I spent time in the State House. But as I reflect, I think there were really two pivotal moments for me that made me decide this was something that I wanted to do. The first was in 2010. A lot of you know, I poured my heart and soul into a bill that really forced insurance companies to honor a woman's right to choose where, with whom, and how she gives birth. It was a huge fight, and nobody thought we were going to win that battle. But we filled the halls of the State House with mothers and fathers and moms and, mothers and fathers and babies and midwives, and it was really an unstoppable movement. And in 2010, in May, a week before Mother's Day, our governor signed that bill into law, which was And I would be remiss if I didn't give a special shout out to Chris Pearson for his help with that bill. But after that signing ceremony, I went down to Kismet to have a celebratory lunch with some folks, and a young woman came up to me and she asked if she could give me a hug. And she said something to me that I won't ever forget. She said, "Thank you for showing me that we can make a difference. I never knew that I could walk into our State House and talk to an elected official and that they would listen, and that we could actually change policy in Vermont. And that by making our voices heard, we could make a difference." And her words touched me very deeply, and I think this is the heart and soul of our democracy, is what makes Vermont special, and Vermont is my home, and I really believe that we can accomplish things here that we just can't anywhere else. And there's a sense of community and a sense of responsibility here that I've never seen in any other place that I've lived or visited. The second moment came when I hit a little bit of a setback last year. It seemed that on that bill, the insurance companies had found a loophole, and so they were continuing to deny women coverage for their home births. So we brought legislation forth to fix it, and despite making it through 2 committees, despite a successful vote on the House floor, despite all of our passion and all of our effort, that bill stalled. And I realized that as an advocate, that was the limit of what I could do. And at that moment, I knew that it was time for me to step into a leadership position. So when some of my closest colleagues in the State House, along with leadership in the Progressive and Democratic parties, encouraged me to run for this office and to run for Lieutenant Governor, I decided this was my time. It was time to step up, to serve the state that I love, the people that I love, and to be an answer instead of just raising questions, and to be a solution instead of just talking about the problems. The question on everyone's mind is, why Lieutenant Governor? The answer is simple, and for me, time is short, and I'm impatient. The world is really changing around us, and that's something that Senator Miller mentioned. And we either have to change with it, or we risk being left behind. And at the same time, our nation and our state are struggling with many of the same challenges that we've been struggling with for decades. The gap between the rich and the poor is widening. Families and businesses in our state budget are struggling under the cost of health care. Mothers and fathers are working harder and making less. And parents are looking ahead to retirement, wondering how they're going to make the numbers work, and they're looking at their kids, wondering, are they going to be able to afford college tuition, and what kind of future awaits them? We're seeing the impacts of climate change. It's affecting our ability to live and work in Vermont. Our lake is choking with blue-green algae. We have a nuclear power plant that should have been shut down months ago. And while all of this is happening, there's a rising political tide across the country that's not only failing to solve these problems, but is really bent on rolling back a century of progress on livable wages, workers' rights, women's rights, and the critical safety net programs that help our Vermonters get through trying times. And Vermont is not immune to this. We've seen some of the most extreme members of the Republican Party come here to visit, and that means something. So I stand before you today with a sense of urgency, and urgency because we have to take action now and make sure that that rhetoric doesn't take hold in Vermont. We have to build economic opportunity for all families. We have to protect working families, hold our ground on collective bargaining rights, and invest in clean energy solutions. But I also stand before you with an incredible sense of responsibility, of possibility for the future, for a strong Vermont where families can not only work hard, but also prosper. That they can look forward to retirement without fear and know their children will not just be able to get by, but do well for themselves. And when it comes to being second in command in this state, there's no room for ambiguity. The Lieutenant Governor is a heartbeat away from the Governor's office. Vermonters should feel confident that the Lieutenant Governor shares their goal and their vision and their values, and that if given this enormous duty, that they will serve the state with steadiness, compassion, and courage. There's absolutely no ambiguity with where I stand, who I work for, or who I will fight for. I'm going to say this is going to be a tough race. I have no illusions about that. The campaign finance filing came out yesterday, and my opponent is outraising me 4-1, and I don't drive a race car, which is an impediment. But this cannot and should not decide an election. I think voters are hungry for strong leadership, they're hungry for bold vision, but they also want to see leaders who operate with sincerity, with honesty, and courage. And as our governor calls it, the ability to get the tough things done. And they're tired of elections being decided by friendships and business deals. They want to believe in their leaders and to trust that their elected officials are in it not for their egos, but for Vermonters, to do right by every Vermonter. And this is confirmed for me time and time again. I'll tell a quick story. When I was in Franklin County field days, it was a fortunately hot day, and I had just gotten done watching the tractor pull. My friend John Dowds was with me. And we were walking around the fair, and I introduced myself to an older couple, both in their early 70s. And the woman was in a wheelchair, her husband, it was clear that life had been hard to them. As soon as I introduced myself to her, she said, "I'm not the person you want to talk to. I hate politicians, I hate politics, I want less government." And of course, me being stubborn, I thought that was an invitation for me to sit down. So we started talking, and I told her a little bit about who I was, what I was fighting for, that I understand what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. I have parents that can't afford retirement, and that it is really important to me that we're leading the state with integrity, values, and keeping us on the right track. And at that moment, she took my hand and had tears in her eyes and said, "Thank you, I'm going to go to the polls and vote just for you because you give me hope." And that is something that I will take with me throughout the campaign trail and continue to have those conversations with Vermonters. I also want to stand here and say that I approach all of you with humility. I want to listen to what you need, and most of all, I need to ask for your help. Just as I can't secure Vermont's future on my own, I cannot win this election alone. But together, dollar by dollar and vote by vote, we can make a difference and ride this wave of inspiration and courage all the way to victory in November. And to my fellow Vermonters, I am with you. You have my undivided attention, and as Lieutenant Governor, I will serve as your ambassador to the State House and be a catalyst for change. So I'm going to leave you today, and I'll take some time to answer a few questions with a quote from one of my heroes, who I spend a lot of the night reading his speeches and watching them on TV, Bobby Kennedy. "Our answer is to rely on youth. The cruelties and obstacles of this swiftly changing planet will not yield to obsolete dogmas and outworn slogans. It cannot be moved by those who cling to a present which is already dying, who prefer the illusion of security to the excitement and danger which comes from even the most peaceful progress. The world demands the qualities of youth, not a time of life, but a state of mind, a temper of the will, a quality of imagination, a predominance of courage over timidity, and an appetite for adventure over the life of ease. So thank you all for joining me here today. I really appreciate it.